Start a conversation. It's easier than you know. Start a conversation. Nobody should feel alone.
Somebody that I've wanted to speak to for a long time, since I discovered her organization, is Hannah Oertel. She is the founder of Delay Smartphones UK, and they are campaigning to protect children from the dangers of smartphones. They are helping and advising parents and schools when and how to introduce technology to children, and that's a really an ambitious task to take on, and I really want to support, and the only way I can really support is by chatting to her on this platform and sharing it with as many people as I can. Also, very much following the advice of Jonathan Haidt, who is kind of the instigator of the movement that I thought would always be deemed as unpopular, because the songs that I've been singing and writing about these issues, just until now, I don't think anybody thought it was such a big deal. Jonathan Haidt has proved statistically in his book, The Anxious Generation, which I'll show you again, that this is a big issue. And there's one thing that Hannah says: we don't need more low investment relationships that are fake. We need less high investment relationships that are real. And if you don't understand that, you can listen to her explain it all right now. Hannah, really nice to meet you. And
Really nice to meet
and
you.
what's fun is that these are actually conversations mostly. Like most of the conversations I've had on this podcast are with people that I don't know. So it's perfect.
Yeah.
Rather than us having a quick chat beforehand.
Yeah.
It's lovely. So thank you so much for coming so quickly in.
Oh no, it's great.
Like just a week or two ago, discovering Delay Smartphones UK and going, oh, why didn't I know about this? Do you want to just say, like, imagine someone's just tuned in and I'm here to talk to you about Delay Smartphones, and obviously I may have introduced it at the beginning a little bit, but tell us how you started this and the journey of that, what inspired you and where you are now.
Yeah, of course. So my background's working as like a coach and therapist. And so I saw over the last sort of 10 years or so, just a big shift with my clients, the kind of issues that I was seeing people for, a lot of social anxiety. And, you know, I always talk about this one client that just really stuck with me, who was really anxious about which tracksuit to wear to her friend's house on a Sunday afternoon. And that was causing so much anxiety that, you know, that she didn't want to go. And every time when you'd kind of come back, I'm like, well, what have you been doing in the day? What's been going on? And it was always Instagram. You know, I've been on my phone all day, you know. So yeah, I was seeing that a lot more, but also have got two daughters myself who are 9 and 11. And I think just from being out in restaurants, things like that, and just seeing kids' faces just always stuck in phones, normally their parents actually, but just thought that, yeah, I didn't want them to grow up, you know, not having these real relationships and communications with other people. So I started talking to other people about this and going, you know, we've got a delay, we can't be giving our kids smartphones. And everyone just said the same thing, that, yeah, it's a nightmare, but you just wait till you've got teenagers, you can't do anything about it, you know, just so much pushback. And so I just thought, well, what I need to do is more research. If I can come up with more research and more reasons to delay, then, you know, everyone else will. So yeah, looked at all the things that was happening, not just with the sort of mental health, but, you know, the physical changes that we were seeing in kids, you know, with their spines, with their brain, looking at all the sort of social development and just the impact that this was having on relationships. And also, you know, because they're spending so much time on smartphones, well, what are all the things that they're missing out on, those kinds of rites of passage, you know, that we had growing up. So something think of like Gen Z as like these sort of 7-year-old adults in a way, because they just haven't had the life experiences that we got to have. But yeah, even from with more research, arming myself with that, I was still having this pushback. Still, you can't have your child being the only one without a smartphone. That's even worse. Um, and so then I realized that I was sort of approaching it in the wrong way. So last summer I went full time with this and quit my job to just really focus on it. And I read a lot into like what makes people change their minds, so both individually but also at the collective level. I've read a lot about political campaigns and things that hostage negotiators do to like get bank robbers out without killing anyone and leaving the money behind. And basically what I realized was that people hate being told what to do. And that was definitely the kind of method I'd been going down. I always said to people, like, you never want to be stuck on a plane next to me because you just can't escape. You'll get the 3-hour lecture. So then I contacted all the parents in my daughter's class and just said, look, I'm doing a bit of research. I just want to see where people are at with smartphones. And a lot of research has come out in the last year that most people are unaware of, and a lot of alternatives have come out. And I said, I'm trying to speak to every parent in our year group. And doing that, I met with 51 sets of parents at their homes and would really just go in with this kind of questioning technique. So rather than just telling them, don't do this, don't do that, it was just like, what are you thinking? Why do you want to get your kid a smartphone? And everyone said the same thing. They wanted to keep them safe. It was this, they were starting to go to school or the park on their own. And they all said they were planning on getting their kid a smartphone around the age of 10. And after they sort of went through all of this stuff, then I would ask them if they were open to seeing the research. So I had this pack of research cards. So there's like 20 cards. And I would just go through them one at a time and asking them if they were aware of this piece of research. And so doing that, they would spread like out over the whole kitchen table. It takes up a lot of space. And even though everyone would want to keep them in a little pile, I'm like, no, let's just really see how many we've got here. And so then they would get sort of quite depressed, but then I would show them all the alternative devices, the watches, the basic phones and things, and let them have a play about with them and really let them know that actually I was there as an optimist. And, I had hope that we could kind of change things as things had changed so quickly. So and then I asked them again, when were they planning on getting, knowing this research, knowing these alternatives are available, would they consider delaying until at least the age of 14? So of those 51 sets of parents who had all said they were going to get their kid a smartphone around the age of 10, 2 had already got them, 48 committed to delaying. So I was like, finally, we've got the method to, to change people's minds. Yeah. So really then it was like, okay, how can we do this at scale? So in that time, we were kind of building out the website. We've now had, thousands of parents who have signed the pledge. We've got 200 volunteer ambassadors across the country doing that method. So we have an online training program that parents, teachers, grandparents can do. They get their own set of research cards and can go out and have these sometimes quite awkward conversations. But yeah, I really feel like there's so much momentum now. There's loads of organizations globally who are kind of really committed to this cause. And I think that we're all pulling together, and it really feels like this is, the beginning of the end of the phone-based childhood. So it's very exciting. So that was a very long answer.
But that's what I wanted to say, the long answer. And it's so inspiring to me. I mean, I think you spoke to Nim already, maybe, or,
Yes.
about what's been front and center for me creatively for the last 7, nearly 8 years now. So I feel like I've been living in a parallel universe where slowly building a future for myself that doesn't involve as much tech, certainly doesn't involve looking at screens as much. Are you happy to talk about it from your point of view, and maybe your mum and your children? I'm fascinated by the generational relationality that's going on with smartphones in or out of the picture.
So my kids, so they're 9 and 11. So my older daughter, because I really campaigned in our own school, her peers don't have smartphones at the moment. So most of them have sort of committed to delaying. So I really hope that will see us through high school. And a lot of them, I think, will not have them for the whole of high school. So certainly my kids won't be having smartphones in high school. And they're very aware, because I've been sort of evangelizing to them, for years about this. So they understand why. I think that it will be more difficult when their friends, start having smartphones. But
How old are
um,
they?
so 9 and 11.
9 and 11, right?
Yeah. Um, but the thing that's really nice, actually, we've just had a weekend up in the Highlands, and with another family whose kids don't have smartphones. And, we're not going to bring any iPads, while we're away. They're just going to have a, wholesome time away. And the thing is, because they don't have smartphones yet, they're not actually missing them. The only times they sort of want them was for like music or something.
Mm.
But just how much creativity they have, of just wanting to make their own fun. And I think that that's the thing that we're really robbing kids of, when they
Yeah.
give them smartphones. It's just that never having an opportunity to be bored. And we know that through boredom, that's where a lot of, creativity,
Mm.
initiative, all those things come from, because you have to find your own entertainment. And so
Mm.
if you never have that opportunity to do that, that's something that really does concern me, that we've done with Gen Z. But my kids, even though I would say personally, I've always been quite intentional about what they're consuming. And when they go to play dates at other friends' houses, having conversations with other parents, like, are they going to have access to the internet? This is something we don't allow. And so, and also just looking for other families that have similar values, so that I don't have to every time ask, are they going to have an iPad,
Mm.
or going to go on YouTube or something. But even within that, they've still been exposed to things, even when we've been at other friends' houses with them
Mm.
at the same time. My daughter had at a choir rehearsal, someone had a phone. This is when she was just 10, of a man. I showed a video of a man getting his head cut off to all other kids, and so you think even when you're really on it, they're still going to end up getting exposed to things. And so it's just processing that, I guess, as and when
Mm.
that comes. Um, but I think that, yeah, in terms of relationships, that because they haven't yet had that experience of, growing up with phones, they're able to, I think, communicate and just relate to people in a better way. And so that's almost why it's so sad when you see kids at this age, where they're really able to do all of these things, engage in a normal, developmentally what we'd expect, at that age point.
Mm.
And then it's just suddenly gone when they've got phones, because we know that kids are choosing online social interaction over in-person interaction, even when they're together. And
Yeah.
so I guess that was a lot of the point of social media and phones, is so that we can communicate with people, to say, oh, look, let's meet up here, make arrangements, have those calls, because they're not with you. But then if you're with them, and as adults, we want to then be like, well, now I'm not, I'm having dinner with you, so I'm not going to be chatting to someone else on the phone. That would just be weird. But
Mm.
that's what's happening now. It's like they're then together. And so that's when they should be having those rich
Yeah.
conversations and really experiencing them with each other, but they're not having that.
And I think gaming was a huge part of this, where it became necessary to be alone in
Yeah.
order to play your game with someone.
Exactly, to be with your friends, to
Yeah,
socialize with your
which is
friends
an
before.
insane. It's an insane, because there are some social aspects of that which I think were helpful for some kids during the lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
That they'd made those kind of communal online relationships, I suppose we
Yeah.
can call them. But coming out of it and getting back to, the embodied world, which
Mm-hmm.
it's that's really challenging. I know those kids that were sort of between 11 and 14 during the height of the pandemic have been, really troubled by this, and certainly
Yeah.
some of the musicians. I mentor sometimes, and this is, I mean, I come at all of this from the point of view as a musician
Mm-hmm.
and sound, and I've just written a blog actually about my childhood being completely screen and tech free, in mountains, and you said boredom, you said the
Mm-hmm.
value of boredom, and I look at it now and I realized my mother knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
And I've had those moments of boredom, and then would be complaining about it as a 10 or 11-year-old. Then suddenly there was a poem, there was a song,
Mm-hmm.
something you draw on your own resources,
Mm-hmm.
right? And of your imagination and your
Yeah.
emotions. It's so important. And then the other thing that occurred to me when you were saying about the importance of being able to go through that sort of boredom journey is that the very, I'm trying to say this, it's quite difficult for me to say, the effects that tech and the advancement and dependency we have on tech has had is that we get answers immediately. Everything's immediate. There's no through journey. There's no mistakes on the way. It's the thing that Tom Waits said. Why do you want to Google it? I want to wonder. You know, I want to think about it a little bit. Don't give me the answer yet. And so when you're talking to those parents, of course, everyone's got a different set of emotions. It's diverse range of feelings and thoughts. Yet we've become a society that want to say, what's the right answer, this or that?
With smartphones for kids, it is quite black and white that smartphones are causing harm, to kids. Yes, there are exceptions where there are positive things, of course. A lot of these things the positives can be achieved with alternative devices.
And laptops don't have the same effect.
Yes. And I mean, you can still track your child with a basic phone. You can still call them, contact them. They can take, rubbish forward-facing photos, exactly. But I think that for adults, it's very different. If we're addicted to our devices, yes, okay, that's not great at all. But if we're having a smartphone when our frontal lobe is pretty much fully formed, that's a very different experience. That means then we've gone through those rites of passage. We've got that maturity and resilience to life. And so that's the thing that we're seeing with Gen Z, where people will say, oh, but it's great, they're drinking less, they're having sex less, they're much more risk averse. It's like, this isn't because they're more mature and more responsible. It's because they're terrified of the world. They haven't gone out and lived and done all of these things because they prefer to be alone, in their bedrooms where they've got these, addictions to their devices. So I think that we can all see, yes, as an adult, there are great benefits, and, as an older teenager, to having a smartphone, things that just make things more convenient, whether it's paying for your parking, checking the weather, when you're out and about, these kinds of things, but they're not necessary for young children, to have these things. And I think that the more life experience we have, the more we can also have a phone that we use that doesn't use us. And so, I always say to people, if you can have an iPhone at home that you need to use for your banking or whatever, great. And then when you go out of the house, then use, a Nokia, use a light phone, use a dumb phone for your main sort of one. And then that means you're much more likely to have real conversations with people rather than, all these kind of.
I mean, that was the starting point for the starting conversations. It's the fifth song on Super Connected, and the line, the first lyric was, girls, boys, put down the toys, and listen to what's inside you. That was in 2016. I was writing that, and going out to start working on it, and I hadn't tell anybody what any of it was about until 3 years ago, because I started to tell that it was quite a kind of, something's wrong with me to think that we might reclaim something that looks like it's in the past. And I'm a retrofuturist, so I think whatever we're doing going forward is brilliant, and evolution and advancing technologies is great. It doesn't mean we have to abandon all the good stuff that we have behind us. So it's this having both, isn't it? And that's my argument when people say it's anti-tech, Tim, and it's like, I'm not. I'm a first adopter, and certainly as a musician as well. Using technology long before a lot of other people in the 90s, but it's what Sherry Turkle says, I'm not anti-tech, I'm pro-conversation, and in embodied sort of ways. I can't remember if I heard you talking about it on something or somebody else, because I've listened to a lot of things lately on this subject, but I was really interested because you are running Delay Smartphones UK, your thoughts on notifications, because I only found out, I have never had a notification on my iPhone. I've had iPhone since 2007 or 2008. And as soon as I realized these things I was like, I choose when I want to find out if someone messaged me. I choose when I want to find out if I missed a call. I choose when I want to see if something happened on Facebook. I have no notifications on my phone. I've never had any. My partner sometimes feels it's really irritating, but I only found out, like, I don't know, 4, 5, when I was writing the album, that
Mhm.
uh, everyone has these notifications on.
Mhm.
I was kind of like, really? You live like that? And now
Mhm.
I'm finding out, oh yeah, like 17 years living like that, apparently.
Mhm.
I've not
Mhm.
had it. Can you talk about the notification side of things at all?
Yeah,
Have you looked
so
at it?
what yeah, so I mean, with the notifications, obviously it gives us that quick dopamine hit, each time because we don't know. There's an element of the unknown of, well, which app has it come from, who's trying to contact us, and we are really social beings, so we're going to go after connection, every time when we can get that fix. And also that's why this is so bad for kids because they're going to keep wanting that, like, what is it? Who's contacting me? What do they want? Is it just someone liking a post? Is it an email? Is it a WhatsApp message? Um, and so when we then have that, when we then see that notification, whatever it is, that then obviously loses, we lose our focus from whatever it is we're doing, whether that's a task, conversation that we're in. And so I think it was Simon Sinek, but he said, that he was like holding a phone. So this is a Nokia. That if you're talking to someone and having a conversation, but you've sort of got the phone like that, right away you feel just not as important, and you're like, I'm just
Yes.
waiting on something that's more important than you.
Which,
And
if you've been
so
alive for 30 years, isn't so
yeah,
important. But when you're
yeah,
very young,
yeah, exactly, it's really, really difficult. And
yeah.
so and I think we've all had that experience of being in a conversation with someone whose phone goes off, a text or something, and they pull it out of their pocket and start reading it, and you're like, excuse me, I'm here with you now, like, is
Mm.
that something that's so important? And often it isn't. Normally it's a rare thing that it's an emergency. Um, and so I think that, yeah, with notifications, it's just making us more and more distracted, less
Mm.
able to, go deep on conversations, work, whatever it is, because we are in that just complete, distracted world. And again, for kids, it's like, then how are they expected to keep coming back to be able to focus on their schoolwork, on relationships? Yeah, because the amount of notifications that we get every day, it's hundreds.
I couldn't believe it when one of my best friends just said, "Yeah, I get notifications for this, that, all the time," and then realized, of course, that kids that have smartphones would have the same thing. I mean,
Yeah, and there's a much worse because they'll constantly send message which is just like one emoji, and so they, what we might have in a conversation of 3 text messages, they
mm,
might have 300, because it's just the constant. I mean, a lot of it is just nonsense, but it's still that bing, 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 bing the whole time
it's
going on.
constant, and I
Yeah.
I think possibly, I mean, I didn't know it at the time. I'm autistic, so I have a particularly rigid when I'm working, concentrating on something. Is absolute. There's nothing else going on.
Mhm,
That's how I
mhm.
write music. That's how I
Yeah.
perform music. That's how I make film. Everything's like, which
Mhm.
now I feel a bit more comfortable about knowing about my
Yeah.
neurodiversity, but I sort of see how I've managed to protect myself from
Mhm.
distraction by
Mhm.
never having notifications on an
Mhm.
iPhone. I just I just wonder how what that, and we are getting on for nearly 20 years since the iPhone. Isn't
Mhm.
another 2 years?
Mhm.
I mean, what do you think the effects of this are going to be, or the ones that
Mhm.
the ones that are in Jonathan's book that you can
Yeah.
talk about?
Yeah, so I mean, again, this is just about addiction to that dopamine hit. And so this is where we've really seen changes in the grey matter of children's brains. And so if you have that dopamine hit, which is then creating that neural pathway, and then every time you have that and you check it, it's just like another hit. So it just gets stronger and stronger, that reaction and
Mm.
wanting that fix essentially. Um, and so we are turning children, and I mean all of us really, but especially children where that frontal lobe hasn't formed properly yet, into little addicts.
Mm.
And so it means that as a society, there is, almost no ability for delayed gratification. And so what does that mean for everything else? What does that mean for our relationships, for our work, for everything, how we live? If we
Mm.
cannot ever wait, we just need it now, instantly. And I think in terms of the addiction as well, then we have lots of issues of transfer addiction. So into whether it's, porn, gambling, shopping, drugs,
Mm.
it's, because we've just setting up our brains to, to be addicts. And I think then, yeah, as parents, we can't then be surprised when our children then become, addicted to other things, because yeah, their brain is literally being wired that way.
I've worked with a lot of addiction therapists. I've been clean 20 years now. I went through my rehab and detox in a Buddhist monastery in Thailand in
Amazing.
2003, and have found that the more I've delved into the world of social media, smartphones, and big tech, I think, the more I'm having the same kind of conversations with people that I've had with people working in the addiction field for the last 20 years. I'm an ambassador for one mental health organization, and still do referrals and assessments for the monastery in Thailand, who are run a world-class free addiction treatment center, and which is entirely Buddhist based, of course. A very beautiful experience to go through if you're suffering as any kind of addict. But I did speak to them recently about the idea that we might be looking at people suffering from addiction to apps and smartphones as something, and they said, yeah, we have had a few already. So that's starting to happen, isn't it?
And I think we will, have that medical diagnosis, coming soon. And I think that will be really, really helpful.
You
for
think
parents.
it'll be put into the what's it called, the manual?
Yes, yeah, I do. I think it will. Because I mean, people are having, and that's what they say. So for people who are against, banning social media and smartphones for young kids, they say, well, if you take it away, look what happens when you take their phone away. They can't cope. They experience extreme anxiety and depression and all of these things. But if you leave it for about 2 weeks, then suddenly they start getting better, and they start getting happier, and they feel more confident and more connected, and all these things that we would expect. But because all the studies are just doing it, oh, look, take it away for that day. Look how bad they are now. Now they're really bad. But that's what you'd see with any addiction. If you take, heroin away from an addict, well, how do you think they're going to feel the next day? Awful. And so I think that things like that, actually studies like that, are really, really helpful to show, well, what happens once they actually do rehabilitate and, come off that, then they're better, they're happier. So we need way more studies that, can show that, more research in that area. But I think that, yeah, so many doctors and teachers, will talk about this, that their kids, even when they've got it in their bag, they can see they're starting to, show anxiety because they want to be with their phones all the time. They want to be holding them. And that's what you'll see a lot with teenagers, is that they don't take them out of their hands ever. They're just sort of attached to them.
Do you know, it's so remarkable. It's great talking to you and hearing you talk about with so much knowledge about the actual medical side of this. I know you said you're a therapist, and what's your background in study in
Yeah, so basically, I started off actually training worked as a hypnotherapist and solution-focused psychotherapist, and then moved a lot more into sort of NLP work, and then coaching. I did business coaching, and then more sort of strategic intervention coaching. So I'm like, anyone who's got issues, then I'm like, I'll try and help you sort
So
your
you
life.
understand about neural pathways, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And that's what I would say. It's the same reaction that you'd see, to other substance issues or whatever, it is with phones as well.
I was interested to know what you thought about Jonathan Haidt's comments about religious communities having a stronger resolve, which I don't think, but for any stretch of the imagination, is a sort of evangelistic
No, he's
thing.
an atheist.
But yeah, and me too, really, and I sometimes say the same thing in connection with Buddhism, which actually isn't a religion, but
Yes.
but my experience. I mean, I'd stopped smoking and stopped alcohol. Don't know for how long? 6 months ago, and I haven't through a Buddhist sort of initiation of vow and intention, and I stand by that the religious or spiritual reverence that we can have to something. It doesn't have to be a community church type thing. It can be anything, but it is massive in solving some of these issues, isn't it?
100%, yes. And I think that that's where a lot of people that I've spoken to in the past who've managed sort of to delay the smartphone with their own children who are maybe a little bit older in that sort of Gen Z age now, they maybe weren't able to do it with parents in their school community, but they were able to do it with their church community and things. And so I think that for a lot of religions, it is a moral issue. You know, exposing kids, especially to porn, I think is one of the biggest issues that religious communities will see is just completely unacceptable. And so we know that, for example, like early exposure to porn is one of the biggest predictors for someone becoming a child sexual abuser later in life. And so it's like, that's not something that you want your kids to be exposed to. And I think that a lot of the times in religious communities, particularly, you know, Christian Catholic communities, they'll be quite naive about what the porn industry is like today, fair enough. But I think the same as like when we were growing up, what you'd see as porn compared to what you see today is just completely different.
No, it's off the scale now.
It is. And so we've got, you know, 27% of all video content online is pornographic. And then it's 86%, I think, of videos have violent content, you know, in them as well. So it's just very young kids seeing videos of rape and things like that. It's just going to mess them up a lot, you know, and especially before they even understand what it is they're seeing. And we know that what's happening is that almost all of that content that they're seeing is accidental, you know, and so they're just literally typing swear words into Google, and then, you know, but they're out with their friends on the bus, and then suddenly they've seen something and they can't take that back, or they're being shared airdropped videos or WhatsApped videos. They open it before they know what it is. And then they've already seen it. So it's really, and I think that for religious communities, it's really, they're going to have a strong motivation to want to protect their communities and their children from this. We all should, you know. And I think, you know, what you say about the Buddhist philosophy as well is that, you know, smartphones are making us, it's the complete opposite of mindfulness, isn't it? And, you know, having that, as you said, the notifications, or it's becoming, you know, so distracted, such meaningless interactions with people that are not our actual friends, not most of the times, not people we're even going to meet. You know, I think, and John Haidt talks about this of, you know, low entry, low exit relationships. You know, so whereas if you have a friend who lives in your community, you know, if you have an argument, it's in your interest to want to resolve that. You're going to see them at school again the next day. You want to fix these things. And that's actually where we're wired to want to do that. Whereas if you are, you know, you go onto social media, you can write one thing and you suddenly get, you know, bombed with online hate from people that don't care about you. And then they can just block you, leave that conversation, leave that group, never have to deal with you again in your life. And, you know, that's one of the reasons, again, why children, we don't want them to be exposed to that kind of stuff, because it still has a huge impact on you. But we do it, you know, we're all doing it. That's, just low investment relationships. What we need are less high investment relationships that are real.
It's almost unimaginable to me. I mean, it was so, what's the word? Rare to hear anyone talking about this when I first started writing songs for Super Connected, that it was like I've you know, I used satire in a lot of it because it was kind of like a caricature of society, and I just thought, you know, it's not going to last forever. It can't do. It's just all my friends have gone mad, and the industry that I'm working in has gone mental. They're just interested in something that's called, begins with the word spot. I think it's very, for an artistic industry, I just found that quite a remarkable name to have anointed the container of all music in the world. What a strange name. I just thought it gone mental. And then, like, you know, one of my close friends is a neuropsychotherapist in Italy, and he was the first person that told me back in 2016 about a patient of his, a teenage girl that just would not associate with her family, would not go to school, and had decided to stay in her room on all the apps that she could get on and do her schooling from there. And, you know, and he was visiting her once a week, and and that's how I started writing about it. But I just thought it's like, an isolated incident, which I found fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Which now it just sounds like it's not isolated, is it?
No. And that's the thing again, that John Haidt says is that, everyone says, oh, COVID, but that's what destroyed their mental health. But they were already, doing social distancing before
Mm.
COVID. That's the thing. They were already in their rooms. They weren't seeing
I,
each other in
I,
person.
I will forgive my lack of diplomacy when I talk about big tech, because everybody knows I'm not a huge fan of it. But but I sort of see what happened with COVID and that period, whether it was deliberate or not, who knows? But it was definitely a way to when I hear change the norm as a thing, that was a way that kind of consolidated the norm, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
That was
Because
where
it was
tech
like if
companies.
you weren't online then, if you weren't, then that was, the
Yeah,
end of communications, with
I wouldn't
people.
say that big tech made the pandemic happen, but they
Mm.
definitely, those companies definitely realized, whoa, this is an opportunity. And I
Mhm.
think that's was a capitalist kind of
Mhm.
opportunity when where nobody really thought about children
Yeah.
and parenting and how important that is to do
Mhm.
without
Mhm.
being invaded by companies who really just care about their profits.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was such a difficult time because when I was working then, I had, an absolute full roster of clients. And I remember, trying to have all my clients and my kids were at home and, they were trying to do schoolwork. And it was just, yeah, it was like really challenging. And so I think for a lot of parents, obviously at that time, it was like, here's my phone, here's your own phone. Right, finally, I can get back to work, because we still had that same pressure to have to work. And, not
Mm.
everyone, but I think that yeah, it was a very difficult conversation. But unfortunately, what happened was at the end of that, what you would have hoped is that people have gone, oh, that's
Mm.
awful, it's over. Now we can really connect in person. And there was that sort of little bit where you felt like that. But then that was it. It
Yeah,
was just, you know, it didn't.
absolutely the same with young musicians. When I'm mentoring young musicians after the pandemic,
Mhm.
they haven't gone out to gigs. They haven't experienced that embodied space where we
Yeah.
make mistakes on
Yes.
stage, and we make mistakes in our
Yeah.
socializing as
Yeah.
youngsters. Um, and I was presented with quite a lot of students that were just so brilliant at doing everything online, and even more than the music, the promoting of the music
Mhm.
through Instagram and everything else, which is fantastic. But there was no aliveness,
Mhm. Mhm.
or enlivenment of
Yeah.
spirit and soul, which is why we love music, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, I really noticed that and thought, yeah, this is what happens when you're sort of being reconditioned. And I don't want to
Mhm.
make it sound like someone was doing it to
Mhm.
everyone,
Mhm.
but it happened, however it happened, and that is something that we have to unwire, isn't it? I mean, John
100%.
talks about rewiring. It's like we've got to unwire that.
Hmm. And that, I mean, you talk about live music, but I think, that is one thing where you really get that sense of, everyone being part of something bigger when you're at a gig or
Mm.
something like that. And I think that it's so sad now when you go to a concert or an event and they're all just standing there in silence, not moving at all, just holding their phones up. And you think, well, what are you going to do? Watch that when you get home and then start dancing and then start singing? Like
Yeah.
this is it. This is it right now.
This is
Um,
huge. This is huge. What you've just said. What you've said is just massive. There's a friend of mine who's a Buddhist monk in Thailand said that in 2003, when people would visit the monastery, they would come and they'd take photos of the
mhm,
beautiful Buddha, 100-foot statues,
mhm,
gorgeous, gorgeous. And then I think by
mm,
2012, 2013, 2014, would come to take the photos, and then they would turn their back on the
mm.
Buddha, and
Yeah.
suddenly it becomes this sort of, from being like a child that is
Mhm,
chanted by the
mhm,
world
mhm.
to saying that's my prop,
Yeah.
that's my backdrop.
Mm.
I'm not
Absolutely.
looking at it.
Yeah.
It's there to support me. and it's such a psychological switch, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, especially in Buddhism, I mean, for that to just be
Which
that
is, we were amazed, just think like,
yeah.
wow, they've come to show themselves
Yes, exactly.
being, I don't know what the word is,
hmm
propped up or validated,
That is what it is, I think. Yeah.
rather than just going, look at that, isn't that
Yeah.
amazing? I
hmm
aspire to
hmm
something like that. Maybe one day in the future, I'm going to take a photo of
I
it.
mean, I found that hugely different. So I went traveling a lot when I was sort of, between 18 and 20 or something. And I found that was people didn't have smartphones then, and it was wherever you were on the back of a, bus, or you'd always be making friends with some random people, chatting to people, and all felt like we're very much in this together, wherever you were in the world. And last year, or sort of, and the year before, we went backpacking with our kids. And I could not believe the difference of that, you'd come to this incredible place in Thailand or whatever. And instead of, people, as you said, taking pictures of the scenery, it was just all along a sort of row of girls in these sort of contorted, positions, and their boyfriends taking, photos of them, over and over again, just for them flicking the hair to get the perfect shot, and you just see it, literally you'd see one, then you'd see another and another. And then they'd get on the boat, and then instead of chatting to you about the day, they would then be on their phones, putting all the filters over them to get the perfect shot. And it was Freya India, who is an incredible journalist from Gen Z from London. But she said that her generation thinks that the point of holidays is for content creation. And so they think it's so
Oh
bizarre
yes, right.
to not want to go away, to just enjoy it. They're like, no, you go there because you want to get the incredible photos to
Yeah.
show everyone you're there in front of the Buddha, and that to me it's just so depressing, that we're
I've
not
heard
there
that.
to experience it anymore.
Yeah, this is resonating with me because I heard somebody recently saying, yeah, I think we, yeah, it looks good, but it's not very Instagrammable.
Yeah.
Instagrammable, and then I realized a lot of hotels are
hmm
asking their sort of PR departments to make sure rooms
hmm
are
Yeah.
Instagram ready.
Yes. Well, that's what they say, this is where you can have your Instagram moments, that
Yeah.
they'll create these kind of special backdrops, and that, this is the place where you can, because I've seen that. I mean, I've been out in restaurants and seen, women order these afternoon teas, take all the photos, pretend to be eating it, all of
Mm.
this, and then just leave the whole lot there and just leave, not even eat any of it. And you're like, so it's this complete
Yeah.
false life. And so it's all about being what you're portraying yourself as. And so we want that social validation, we want those likes, we want to be told you're enough.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It is like addiction. It is like drug
yeah,
addiction. Speaking as an
yeah,
ex-addict, it is like drug addiction in terms of the life that you lead becomes something that is um, you sort of fill it with the paraphernalia and the things that support your addiction.
yes, exactly.
And it can be all kinds of objects and things and
Mhm.
places, the way that you live, basically, and the timings of the way you live, so that you're ready for
Mhm.
whatever it is that you're taking, that you're addicted to. It seems like it's having an effect beyond just being on the smartphone. It's
Mm.
actually everywhere else becomes about that.
Yes, and I think that also because even from young kids, there's also this business opportunity, which is really unfortunate because it just really,
Paid
you know,
partners. What the
yeah,
hell is
well,
that?
exactly. The fact that you can be a child influencer, and so you can be paid, quite well from, if
Mm,
you create content that's popular, you can get paid from that. So I think that, and that's why we see so many girls in particular, but, boys wanting to be gamers, girls wanting to be influencers, as a real career choice. And a lot of people say, well, my daughter, she is earning more money than I ever earned at that age. And you're like, yes, but that, comes with some caveats, doesn't it? It's like they may be earning a great income for a period, but if it's very hollow, what's that going to mean for them later on, and how is it impacting them today as well, especially when they're doing things like, surely if you're taking all these photos, pretending to do something like eat these cakes or whatever, and then just throw it all in the bin. Like, how does that make you feel inside? It's complete lack of integrity, and that doesn't make anyone feel good about themselves.
Let me ask you a big question, because it's so brilliant, Hannah, just hearing your passion and expertise. Because it's easy to have one or the other a lot of the time on issues like this. It's rare to hear someone who's got both. Where there's two different approaches I see here in terms of changing the norm. One of them is obviously action at national government, but the other one is just the tech companies and going straight to them, because there's a feeling that certainly that I've had in my research, that government aren't quite as powerful as the tech companies. And in fact, I think some would argue that policy isn't made really by governments, and probably is made a lot of the time by the lobbying that Silicon Valley companies can afford.
Yeah.
What do you think? Where do we put the optimism? Because there is a lot of it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that it is a combination. So that's what John Haidt talks a lot about, this collective action problem. And so a lot of people, even within like child protection services and that industry, will say, they'll disagree with me and say, no, we shouldn't be delaying, because then it lets the tech companies, off the hook. And so I think we need it from all angles. Right now, it's not in the interest of big tech to mark their own homework. They're not going to self-regulate. They're not going to, do any big things, because it goes against them making more profit. However, we've seen things in the past where if they do not make those changes, they may end up not having their platforms. They may just be gone. And we've seen already in some countries like Nepal, where they've just gone no TikTok because it's not good for social harmony, gone. And that can happen again, in other countries. In the US, with different reasons, but could happen again there. And there's no reason why that couldn't happen here. So we need to make it that it's in their interest to want to protect children. They're going to be addictive, the algorithms, but there are some things they could do right away, like stopping the sort of auto play feature of like the really short videos. Things like that just shouldn't be allowed. It's not good for our brain to be seeing content in that way.
That's like warfare tactic.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that we need to make it really clear what we expect out of them, and then they need to be motivated to do that they think actually they might lose their whole business, essentially. Although that sounds really far-fetched right now, I do see that over the next couple of years, if they don't make their changes, they may just end up getting banned. But I think that, and then we need, governments. So things like social media, there should not be any social media, I don't think, for kids under 16. We should use external age verification apps. And that's what we should be sort of lobbying government, for. That's something that's quite simple for them to implement, not expensive. But we also need, the collective action of parents and schools coming together as well. Because I think, when I was at school, it was yo-yos were banned for being too distracting, and so like here we've got this device that's like perfect for bullies as like a weapon. We've got all the distraction. We know this is what's happening to kids, their grades. We know in terms of being able to film. Imagine your most embarrassing moment at high school being filmed and then shared with everyone in the school over and over again. So smartphones have absolutely no place in school whatsoever. And I think that schools need to have a ban that's really enforceable, with like the lockers, the pouches, and really kids shouldn't be using smartphones to travel to and from school. They should be using simple devices that have, a use rather than us getting used by them. And I think that as parents, a lot of people will say, oh, I don't want my child to be socially excluded. And if all their friends are on Snap or TikTok, then, I have to let them have it. I have to let them have the smartphone. We will 100% look back on this time of what we did to Gen Z, the biggest social experiment we've ever seen, on kids. And be horrified at what we allowed them to be exposed to. We have insight that parents never had 10 years ago. So it is our collective responsibility, to protect all children, but, also just for the sake of humanity, to make a better choice for them. And so I think that someone has to go first. And we're at a point where a lot of people, we're very sheep-like. We want to all do what everyone else is doing, but we know it's wrong now. And so I think that that's the thing that we're going to be looking back. If we still give our kids smartphones now, what Gen Z are saying, I wish I didn't have a smartphone so young. I wish that none of us had social media. If we could just delete it and no one had it, it would be great. We don't listen to them and still just go, oh, whatever, here you go, 10-year-old, and have an iPhone. I think that our children are going to come back to us and say, so you knew all of this and you still decided to give me a smartphone. What's that about? And then what are we going to say back?
Yeah, it is actually about maintaining relationships in families because of the problem as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe 2017 was when I wrote "You Like My Pictures," and this song came from. I was doing a session with a singer, quite well-known singer, so I won't say who they are, but she brought a toddler, and and was crying. The toddler was crying, and I said, "Well, let's stop. We'll just start again in a bit, So no, it's fine. And she got an iPad and shoved the iPad into the toddler's hands like that, and then suddenly quiet immediately.
Yes, yeah.
And I had this double feeling. One of them was like, "Oh, great, we can get on with the session."
Yeah.
And then the other one was like, "Whoa, that's really weird." I might have to write about that later. And I did. And I wrote that song, "You Like My Pictures." And in the film, I just kind of show it a little bit. It's my character, and it is, spending too much time with a toddler with an iPad. But
I would just say I've definitely done it. I'm not completely, free of guilt here. And I think that what happens with a lot of parents is that we say, okay, I'm in this situation where I've got to get, take this really important phone call, and I need them to be quiet because it's something really vital. But I think that what happens is we think, oh, this is just a one-off. And if we're just using this every now and then, of course, it's absolutely fine. What's not okay is every single time you go to a restaurant as a family, you just shove a device in your kids' faces and you have no communication. That's when it's really, and that's unfortunately what is the norm now. If you go to any family restaurant, it's rare to see a kid that's not on a device actually just communicating with their family. And that's the heartbreaking thing.
Shame is, again, it's very closely connected to addiction.
Yeah.
And I just, as the same as for any human being at all, I think that it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah,
it's okay.
It is.
And I think it's okay for parents to go, we kind of made a mistake here, but it's not really a collective parental mistake. It's the best you can do at a time when you're being confronted with a sophisticated technology that you don't really understand. That's what Douglas Rushkoff talks about all the time. Chances are, if you don't know how something is programmed, then it's probably programming you.
Yeah.
And it's nobody's fault, but that doesn't mean it needs to stay the same. And I think the fallout, as you've said, is that later on there's a much bigger fallout, isn't there, potentially around the corner, with an entire generation being pretty cross with their parents.
Exactly. And the thing is that, I always think that we will do so much research when we want to buy a new toaster or microwave, we'll look at all the reviews and is this one better? Should I get this? But then when it comes to our kids' first smartphone, we're just like, oh, I've got an old iPhone in the drawer. There you go. And the thing is, because we might have one experience on Facebook or Instagram, as someone, who's 40 and think, oh, well, that's the same app that my kid's getting, but they're having a completely different experience on that same app because of their age and their interests and everything. And so what might be really safe for me isn't going to be for a 9-year-old. And I think that's the thing. It's like, we need to be doing more research, okay, we want to get our kid, their first phone. We need to be able to communicate with them. Well, what do we actually need? So we need to be able to maybe track them. Some parents want to do that. We need to be able to call them, text them, so what are the devices that can do that? And I think that that's right now where lots of parents like, oh, I didn't even know that Nokia was still in business. oh, I didn't know that, they just think, oh, I've got an old iPhone in a drawer. It's free, so I'll give them that, even though for £5 on eBay, you can buy a brick phone. It's not about the money, is it? It's just that convenience. We know how to use it, so we'll just give that to them.
I've got a Nokia. I made Super Connected on a Nokia.
Yeah.
I thought before I started filming, I thought, I've never made a film before for a start.
Yeah.
I thought, I can't do this with an iPhone, which the whole thing is about a bit. And not to blame Apple, people make irresistible products. We need to be collectively responsible for how we are attracted to those products. But it is so much better having a dumb phone. I don't like the fact that they're called dumb phones. Actually, I think we need to change that.
Someone said to me, for kids, they said, dumb phones are for smart kids, smartphones are for dumb kids.
And adults.
Yeah, exactly. People, I think it should be.
People, just people. One thing, I don't know if you know about the light phone. Do you know about the light phone?
Yes, yeah.
I've just gone over to light phone.
Yeah, okay, great.
And
how are you finding it?
It's amazing. And I tell you what, I've seen some comments from people, parents actually exploring other routes for their kids. Saying it's too slow, it just doesn't do this, and of course it's designed to be slow. And one of the things that I found really helpful is that when with an iPhone, you want to call somebody, you just go flip, flap, flip, chat.
Yes.
You're calling them. I'm with the light phone. I'm waiting for the screen to refresh. It's going around. By the time I'm actually hearing a ringing tone to my girlfriend. I'm only thinking about her and having a conversation with her, and I remember why I'm holding this thing. And it reminds me of the old days in the 90s.
The phones like that.
A bit where it's like, this is a ritual. I am going to speak and listen to somebody else, and that's about it. Which is different with the iPhone. But I mean, quite often with an iPhone, I'm sure other people, I'm guilty of just getting someone on the phone, it starts ringing, and then I'm looking at something else until they answer. I mean, that's insane for me as an adult. But so I think it's almost just so obvious for kids who, like you say, that's still developing, both mentally and emotionally. So that it's one thing saying a mind isn't ready, but your ability, your emotional intelligence, which, as we all know as adults, is not the greatest study as well. We're only just getting it together as adults to realize emotional intelligence is a thing. There's parts of child's emotional intelligence which is innately superior to ours, and that's getting sort of messed with a little bit, isn't it?
Definitely. And I think it's also that, they're so vulnerable to be manipulated, kids, and so with their first interaction with all these other kids, that they see online who are just adults, trying to take advantage of them, whether it's for, sexual images, money, whatever that is. And I think that, we think, well, I'm not really at risk of that, even though adults still are getting scammed every single day. It's still, it's a complete different risk. As an adult, if you're trying to manipulate an 8-year-old, there's quite a high chance you'll be able to do it because you can trick them. And I think it's putting our kids out there into a world that they're not prepared for at all. And they don't have the maturity to be able to do it. And so why would we want to kind of end that innocence of their childhood faster? That's something, if anything, we want to be, really prolonging that innocent period as long as possible.
I love that and really resonates, but I'll send it to you. I've only just written it as a blog about all of this, really, where my childhood is something that has been kind of like a survival tool in recent years of, tech information overload and all the things of the modern world, which are both wonderful and draining, I think, for all of us. And I look into my childhood and carry a bit of that spirit. And before everything became available, everything became permitted, everything became so apparently possible.
Hmm.
And then I realized, it's not just the actual childhood, it's the childhood of all of us that we carry with us through
Hmm.
life. And so I've got that as a
Yeah.
tool. It's great. I can go back and go, do you know, I'm going to do what I did when I was 13. I'm
Yeah.
going to switch everything off like an incense stick and,
Hmm.
I don't know, and look at some book about Celtic mythology or something. And there's no screens, there's no tech or anything. And
Yeah.
I just think if you don't have that in your childhood,
Hmm.
when you're an adult and things get tough, you don't
Yeah.
have that to draw on either.
Definitely. And that's also why I feel like as a millennial, it's so vital that we sort this out now, because for Gen Z, they don't know any different. As I was saying, they go on holiday, they think it's for content creation. They don't know living a life that's not online, where everything gets shared. And so I think that's why we have so much responsibility here to really guide the way on this. And with AI and VR, it's all just going to get so much more extreme. And for me, it feels like the end of humanity, really. I know it sounds drastic, particularly, with porn. I mean, that's something I'm just, and I don't talk about it that much, but I think that before boys, it would be, there was such a desire of wanting to have sex that would make them get over that period of talking to girls. I have to get out of my comfort zone. I've got to ask her on a date. I've got to, otherwise I'm not going to have sex. So I just have to get through this period. But now with porn and with like Apple's goggles and, all what's coming with virtual reality. And what we've seen is that boys are now, they can get that fix without leaving their bedroom. It's so realistic that they don't have to bother going and, finding a real life girlfriend, because actually, this is
Oh
just
my God, you're going to love the film. there's a, I mean, we don't just look at kids' smartphone and that. We're looking at
yeah.
mum and dad and their problems too.
Yes.
The whole
Yeah.
film is how it is possible for the entire family to become disconnected because
Yes.
of their relationships with themselves and the technology in
Yeah.
their pocket. You know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it'd be great to do something with you and support you in whatever way we can. I mean, with the shows, come and get involved. I mean, you were talking about you're chatting to parents about this in a just an easy way. That's sort of what Kate and I are doing at the end of the shows. We have, I mean, first of all, we don't make it like a compulsory thing that you can't have your phone. If
Yeah.
someone's going to like go, I got to have my, then we're going to look to stop them. But I don't have a phone on stage. So there's this idea that it'd be great if we can just connect in a space, because it's the film and the songs are about that. And let's see if we can manage it for like 85 minutes.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, it's like a game. It's like who can stay like disconnected for as long as possible. And last time, of course, everyone did,
Yeah.
and everyone was speaking. And it was the first time in years I've been in a room full of people, certainly after a show of mine, where everyone's talking and enlivened, and you're never seeing that thing where it's like.
Yes.
And yeah, I know, Hannah. No, it was brilliant, and yeah. There was none of that. It was
Yeah,
just
amazing.
real. It was real. So if you and talking about that, so it's kind of weird meta experience of people watching a thing about phones while not having a phone, and then talking about it without phones.
Yeah.
It's just it's a wild night out, but it's quite rock and roll as well. And if you like cinema, then it's all of it together. But I'd love you to come along and
Yeah, definitely.
get involved.
Yeah.
And
I
if you've
think
got
I
literature that we can share with
Yeah.
anyone about it, then I'm really want to help. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, that would be amazing. Yeah, I mean, just send me all the dates that you're going to be, and then we'll, see. I'm going to be in London, I think, in the beginning of May. But I know
Okay.
anyway, we'll find
We
out.
get to London in June, but we
I can
start.
come back anyway, yeah.
Yeah, we've got time. Let's. The beginning of the May, we might be doing. It's the album's 1 year anniversary on the 5th of May. So
Okay.
definitely going to do something for that somewhere in
Okay.
London. Not sure what yet, but yeah, it'd
Okay.
be great if you're in London then.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm so excited by what you're doing as well, because I think it's just, it helps just get the word out more and get people talking about this, so it's not such a taboo subject. And I think it's one thing as adults for us to be like, oh yes, I know it's bad, but anyway, whatever, just sort of. And I think there's a lot of that kind of we don't know how to do that, how to unplug anymore. But I think that there are, we've realized this is a massive problem for our relationships. And that's why I was speaking to Nim as well, but the Unplugged Collaborative, they're based on the West Coast of America. They do these events globally, but the same thing where you put your phone in a sleeping bag, for the night, and then you have this night out. And I think that you might want to work with them as well for your event, because I think they might have some funding or something they could help you with too.
Wow, yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I don't want people to put their phones in bags all the time, but I think starting up, because
but
we've
for,
had
for a time and place, I think it's
there's a time and place.
Is.
Ritual and sacred space is such an inspiring thing. I feel very lucky to have lived the kind of creative life I've had without the childhood that where people said, be quiet now and pay attention, with my mum. Whether it was a concert singer, an actor on stage, whatever it was, just like someone's doing something special for you.
Yeah.
It's nothing, just put nothing between you.
Definitely.
That's like, it's sacred, and it's
so
cool.
Absolutely. And it's so lost. And we take our kids often to the jazz bar in Edinburgh, and it's like live music there. And because it's an older generation, no one's on their phones, no one's filming it. It's just everyone's just there. And it's so special. And for my kids to even see that now in 2024, that's quite a rare thing, to go to any kind of gig where people aren't just filming or on their phones.
More spaces for older people as well.
Yeah.
In general, because they're way ahead.
They are. That's the thing. I mean, I don't like going to live concerts if it's going to be all kids just on their phones, because it's so depressing. You're just like, get me out of here. I want to be here with the music.
It's a community thing. It's basic, and I think lots of people have been talking about this kind of stuff for many years, but it's becoming really important that community is the thing. It's whatever we're doing, and that I think is it 10 to 11 hours of smartphone use with teenagers in the UK per day. I think we've got it. There's so many amazing things happening in real life that can enliven you and grow your imagination, not your followers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, listen, it's so good to meet you, and fun, and typical, isn't it, that we've met online?
Because that's what people always say. Oh, how funny that you're promoting this on Instagram, and I'm like, but I'm an adult.
No, listen, you have to use the tech.
Yes.
Against itself.
Definitely, it's the
I've
only
learned
way.
that.
Yeah.
I've learned that with the album and the film, and now with the shows. I mean, it's insane to promote an entire arts project about the dangers and divisive nature of technology when you can only tell people about it by using technology.
I know.
I mean, if it was the 90s, I'd be running up and down putting flyers in people's post boxes, but it's not. But when we get there to the shows, it's like we're there, we're real, and there's no screens left. And I hope you'll be at one or two of them when we do it.
No, I'd love to. I'd love to have that conversation with you then as well. Awesome.
Hannah, thank you
so much for having me.
So much for this super connected, very educational conversation.
No, well, thank you so much for all the work you're doing. I can't wait to see the film and be part of it.
La, 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 la. La, 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 la. Don't you wanna sing la, 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 along with me? Well, don't you